Here. Hey friends, it is Frannie of Shine with Frannie, and I've got yet another backdrop for you today. I'm here with my friend Melissa Anderson Hegwood, and we are in a beautiful outdoor setting today. We're at her house. And first of all, if you are tuning in live, give me a thumbs up. First of all, if you can hear us okay and see us okay. And then secondly, let me know if you can see us. We've moved the orientation to make sure that both of us, because some of the feedback that I got from last week, Randa, let me know. Can you just tell me, can you see us okay? Because we're turned horizontal versus vertical. So give me a thumbs up if you can see us okay. Okay, she says awesome. Okay, super excited to tune in with you guys today. This is Melissa, and Melissa and I actually know each other from our high school years, crazy and oddly enough. But we're going to tune in today and talk about homeschooling. Now, I want to give a disclaimer up front, you guys. One is I'm trying to bring you guys like timely, trending tips and tricks, because last week we talked about dating, which because of COVID obviously has jacked up a lot. And so now obviously a buzz topic is homeschooling. Now, I do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer for my friends out there who are teachers. This is not something that we are trying to say in place of, some schools are going back. Obviously, some parents are choosing to have their kids go back to school full time. This is a deliberate choice that Melissa and her husband, Brendan, who might be joining us here in a little bit, that they made a choice last year before COVID happened. So last fall, actually almost a year and a half ago, more than a year and a half ago, they started the exploration of that. So she's just going to dive right in, and I'm going to ask her some pointed questions. And by all means, put your questions in the Facebook live feed there today, because we want to be able to give as much information to people as they're tuning in. So we're going to start just by asking, first of all, tell us your 3 kids' ages.
Yes. Andrew is 14, so he is a freshman, or going to be a freshman. And Allison is 13. She is going to be in 7th grade. She's going to be in 7th grade.
That's all superfluous.
Well, she's going to be in 7th grade. And then our youngest is Anna, and she's 9, and she's going to be in 4th grade this year. So I say this year, but we're already into the midst of school year. Yes, school. So,
so why don't you tell us why you guys decided to first start? And now, guys, remember, I'm Christian. My friend Melissa is Christian too, so her reasoning might be very different than yours. But I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people who homeschool their children regardless of their religious orientation.
It's definitely an individual thing, and it was not anything that we took lightly. We really felt like God was telling us to about 3 years ago, and I just kept ignoring it, really, because I was like, there's no way I can't do that. And we were at the school that Frannie and I actually graduated from. Some of you online might have also graduated from there too. And things were fine. Things were good. They were getting a Christian orientation. Granted, it was of a Catholic, bent, but they were at a Christian school, and we felt good about that. But God just would not let it rest, really. And like I said, I had a lot of fear and trepidation about it, because I work, we have a business, I have a family business. So I couldn't decide that I just wasn't going to work anymore. It wasn't an option. So once I reached out, I think one of the biggest things was I reached out to, that's not going to work. That's
one of the things that happens during homeschooling.
Yeah, no.
You might have a dog who does that. So I'm just saying. It's okay. They're going to take the dog. So anyway, so you felt that the Lord was calling you.
Yes,
God was calling you to do this.
And really, it was overwhelming for me for kind of my personality. I just felt like we can't do this. There's just no way. I can't add one more thing into my life. But it didn't go away, and so there was just a lot of things that we were experiencing, just a lot of change, and we felt like God was pointing us that we needed to change what the kids were doing for learning. And I said, with Brendan's help, I think we can do it, and with God's help, really, because it's a daily challenge.
Parenting is a daily challenge. For those of you who are tuning in, give us a thumbs up if you would agree with that, because I'm not a parent, and I see my friends, and I'm like, Lord has not blessed me with children, because, so...
Yeah, it definitely changed everything up. Well, my girls were very excited. They thought that it would just be a great opportunity. And we had many goals. That was one thing that we felt like, if it's anything to consider to going into homeschooling, that the family goals. Here comes my husband. He was out playing in the woods.
You get to meet Brendan now. Exactly.
I'm going to have to sit closer to Frannie, which I don't mind. But we felt like we needed, what's the goal? And one of the goals we had really was to create better sibling harmony. We really could see that the kids were just going off in their own very separate directions and not getting along well at all. And so it was causing a lot of disharmony even in the family. And, you know, talking to some friends that had homeschooled their children, that was one thing that they would say, definitely, when you spend a lot of time with each other, you're going to probably have to either get along or you're going to kill each other. And so that was one of our goals, was to create, you know, a little bit more sibling harmony.
Right.
And also just really work on, like, training, like, the character traits that we really felt like, well, we would say we're complaining about things that we don't see or we don't like going on in the church. And we're complaining or, like, not comfortable things that we see that's going on in the school that we wish. And we kind of looked at each other and said, why are we complaining about these other, it's our job.
As
And
parents.
they're our kids.
That's
God gave them to us. So we've outsourced so many things in this culture that we just really felt like God was like saying, hello,
Right.
you've also outsourced parenting.
That's your ministry. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was hard to ignore, really.
And I mean, I don't know if you guys have touched on this already since I came in late. Sorry, but but it also kind of goes to like one of the big myths about homeschooling. About, well, what about socialization?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you know, we kind of realized, okay, should our kids get their socialization from us and from each other, or do we want them to go and be
Exposure.
socialized by other 12-year-old kids?
Interesting.
And
who Lord only knows what they're learning.
Which
Right,
we were seeing
so-
that
Right.
fruition
Right.
already.
So, you
And
know, a
this
lot of people
part,
have,
you know,
they have a lot of fear about
Yeah, they're gonna be
the
all awkward and
socialization
weird.
because they're not going to be around other kids. Well, I would argue that there's probably going to be times where you're not going to want
That's an
them.
interesting
You know,
perspective.
because you see some of the things that are going on like TikTok that these kids are doing, and,
Right.
and oh my gosh, it's just
At
downright
least this way you can
scary.
limit it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, no, and that's an interesting point. What I hear you guys both saying, though, is interesting, is like it seems like it's very much value-based versus necessarily like a curriculum. That
Right.
wasn't like necessarily something you guys were like concerned with there. It was more like the value systems.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, it's kind of like changed my focus too, because you know, we really got to thinking about this, and we're big fans of Chip Ingram, and one of his series said, "What's your target? What's
And
your
he's a
target?"
pastor, for those of you who are tuning in case you don't know. But yeah.
And so we kind of decided what is our target for our kids? Is it more important for our kids to go to an Ivy League school and to be successful, as in have a lot of money and have a
Or have that degree from that, you know, that diploma from that school.
right? Or do we want our kids to have a love of God, to have a good heart?
Right. Yeah.
So for us, it's not, a lot of it may not
it's
even
very
about specifically about education
Right.
and the curriculum and what school are they going to, but we
Right.
want the kids to grow up and love the Lord. You know, if they, I will be satisfied if they are.
Don't offend all the janitors.
Yeah,
He always says
I mean,
janitors.
yeah, you want to, yeah. If
certain-
they're
He
doing,
says
how
if they
about
wanna be a
this?
janitor-
If they're doing a minimum wage job,
Right.
and they love
Right.
the Lord,
And ministering the people that they work with.
yeah,
And
then,
they
yes.
yeah.
yeah, is that
fulfilling
more
their
important? Is it more important for them, you know, to be working 60-hour weeks, making a lot of money at this high-paying, high-profile? What's more important?
Right,
you
right.
know?
No, and I think that's something that's so interesting, and you bring it up. And I think for my perspective too, having been an admissions director, right? Like we used to always, as admissions, and I was in admissions in a private school, you guys, for a long time. And I remember saying like, oh, this one's a homeschool kid, put that to the side. Like we used to always be very cautious of kids who were homeschooled because we felt that their curriculum was not, it was more watered down, and it was more of like playing school. And I know you mentioned that when we were talking about this. Can you talk a little bit about like what that felt like and how you kind of had to break down that paradigm, like in your mind, of what you thought school would be like at home?
I was telling Frannie like that we still struggle with
Oh,
that a
yeah,
little bit,
big
and of course
time.
as our school teacher that we're not, it's called homeschool, although I always very often will say we're educating at home, but it's not. You really can't reproduce school in the home. I mean. And people do. So
And there's
I don't wanna say
curriculums
that,
out there that are like that.
There are very much so, but that's just not what we have felt.
Like a lesson one, week one, like that kind of thing, like broken
yes,
down.
very much so. Yes, very much so. And we just really don't feel like that doesn't feel natural to us. It just feels forced.
Right.
And so, and we've struggled with this. Like I was telling Frannie earlier, that like we ourselves, being that we were educated in an institutional setting. The kids have been. I mean, Andrew
this
up
point,
until this
right.
point, and the other ones. that we had to sort of say, it doesn't have to look like the one model that we have all come to know.
Yeah, it's so hard to break out of that box of this is what school is. And like for us, like what do we remember from when we were in school? Very little.
We can't talk about that right now.
There's some teachers who might be tuning in. Angie Lombardi, just saying.
But I think if
we loved her.
Like for me, it's not so much about like what I learned from in school, but it was more like developing a love for learning.
Yeah.
And then once you find that thing that you want to learn about, you know,
your path.
and for me. During school, I wasn't the greatest student. I mean, I made A's and B's, and
but you know, but I was probably
it just. I mean, it was just okay. I got to go to school, got to pass this test, got to do this, got to go to college, blah blah blah.
It's more the obligatory.
And it wasn't until I got into college that I started to really get a desire and a love for learning, and I think that has paid off more than any class that I took. It was just if I like cars and learning how engines work and just diving into that. It was the love for learning, and so that's what we kind of want
to cultivate that.
Right, instill in our kids instead of okay, you need to learn A, B, C, D, so you can
And I was going to say, we really felt like some of that was starting to fall apart in middle school, because it becomes like, even in the schools, they become, okay, now we got to like make sure we're getting them ready for, career readiness and tests. And
your kids weren't in a public school where they were taking the Common Core.
No, but they did. They took like Dibbles, and they did take, they did do some
but they weren't required to take this standardized. Because I know that, obviously having been in the private sector my entire life, grade school, high school, everything was private. And so even when I taught and everything, they're so state driven to the test, so driven to the state test. And so that took a lot out of it. So I know that we've got some teachers tuning in, principals, people who are tuning in. By all means, put your little notes there. Let us know if you have any questions. But I want to dive into two things. One, you mentioned, Brendan, and this is not on my notes. So one, you mentioned, the love of learning and things like that. Like I know that, and you mentioned like we can't talk about some things from high school. Like you don't remember trigonometry, day so-and-so. I didn't take trig. I was not that student by any means. But, Simon Sinek always says, like, you'll remember the people. You remember the teacher. You remember the people who go out of their way. And that, I think, speaks to what you're talking about. And so I think for somebody who is tuning in, who's considering, like, this homeschooling, like, it is about, there's so much more than just, and I was not a good student. I barely made 1,000 on my SATs. Like, but I consider myself successful, like, by, because I love the Lord and because I do things for the Lord. And so it's like,
hard worker.
So exactly, like the work ethic and all those other things. So if you're considering it and you're wondering, like, how your kids, like, what exactly they're going to perhaps miss, what can they, like, talk a little bit about your passion projects, because let's talk about how you enhance and how you were able to then kind of dive into
there is so much to do. It really is almost as much time as you can spend. I mean, really, there's so much to do. But we really found, like this year, especially with the COVID season that came upon us, our schedule also got very quiet. And we had decided that we were going to just get outdoors and do things. And especially like with Andrew, I mean, he could care less about books really at this point. I mean, he loves to read. He's an avid reader, so that he does love to read. But
diving into a textbook or something
kind of say like schoolwork. He's just kind of like, I gotta do.
It's boring. He does it so he can go outside and play, but or go out and ride his bike or whatever. But he's building lists and making up the like cost sheet and going to Lowe's and building things and using power tools and. I mean, just the fire in him to do that. And so he was really just trying to get through some of the mechanics of the day so that he could go and explore the things that he wanted to do.
That he was interested in.
And we actually did do like some like passion, like mapping, which is more, a little bit more we hope to get into, but, picking like a topic and seeing like, how can you make it into a business and what can we learn from it?
Right.
And all the kids benefited from doing that, just kind of doing some like imaginative mapping and journaling. And so that was good. And that was some of those, like I said, we didn't take that much time this past year to go down those trails because we really were ourselves having a hard time not being like a slave to the curriculum.
And it was all new too.
And it was new.
Yeah.
You were afraid of not checking
I
things
was
off
afraid
of
not checking. And so now I think even just after having like 1 year and I had friends that warned me about that I just didn't listen, that, as long as they're learning, it don't necessarily have to get through the whole book. But I was like, oh
Right.
no, we're getting through
Right.
it. I
Right.
divided the lessons and
Right.
how many weeks, and we're doing it.
Yeah, it's so hard. You don't know how to judge
Right.
the
Right.
progress. You
Right.
don't know.
Yeah.
Are they learning what they're supposed to be
Right.
learning? And
So, but that's a good question too. Is like accreditation. Obviously, there's a state. We're in the state of Pennsylvania here, you guys. But there's a state accreditation that you guys are following, and then you had to submit like a portfolio.
Yes, you
and do
go
certain
right.
things,
So you
right?
you take samples of your work from like the beginning, the middle, the end. You put together a portfolio, which is really fun and like definitely like something the kids will keep forever. And it just kind of highlights from the year. We took that you take it to an evaluator. They look through it. They ask the kids a few questions. Some are more thorough than others. And you basically get approved to continue the education process. They want to look at progress
And make sure they're just not sitting around watching Netflix. All
yes.
Right, yeah.
And every student can be at their own level. And that's like what I said to you earlier. You know, like we everybody got through like one whole math year by the time January rolled around.
Was there
they
ever
were
a
done.
time that they were ahead of you? Like they would have been ahead of me in math, like
All the
ninth grade
time.
math.
Oh, yeah.
all the time.
I mean, like no,
Yeah.
like I would have been
Yeah.
like, I don't know how to do that math problem.
yeah, I don't
will
remember.
YouTube
That's the
it.
way
Yeah.
no, all the time.
Okay, so how
And
do you combat that? Like, do you
we
YouTube
learn
it?
with them?
Yeah.
You YouTube it, or we learn with them. And like a lot of this stuff you can go on YouTube and find things, or
was
you
gonna say,
just
what
sit
are
and
some
read through the
tools
textbook.
And we're hoping like the kids even watching us, figuring out how to be
Figure out how to do
problem,
it,
how to
yeah.
be problem
And we
solvers.
try
Like,
to talk it
yeah.
through, and that's really
Like,
the
I think
best.
it's this.
Yeah, that's really the best way to learn. Sometimes is if you say, "Wait a minute, well, how did you get to that? And how did we do that last
Right,
time?" And you
right.
kind of work through it. I mean,
That's a
Allison-
space of humility that you have to have as
Oh
parents.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Because
big
if you're too proud and say like,
No,
"Oh, I know
right.
it all," then you're never going to be able to get your
No,
kids to.
uh-uh.
believe
Yeah,
it.
and you can be exposed as a fraud real quick.
time.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sure they're like, Dad doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, believe me. Like I said,
Pythagorean theorem. Is. Like, I didn't know
like
what
I
that
said,
is.
we've
I don't
been
even
doing
remember what that is.
fractions since February, and I'm like,
You're like, can you
Yeah,
bake
yeah.
all the time? So you're like, I should know a third and a fourth, like what the difference
oh,
is. Like,
it
should
is.
be- yeah.
And Allison like loves to bake, and I keep saying, see these fractions, they just keep popping up. We keep doubling recipes and tripling recipes. This is why you need to know, you know. So, but
That's
it's
real life,
But it's
though.
fun.
I
It
love
is.
that,
It's real
yeah.
life, and so you just learn right along with them. And that's really what we all need to do. I mean, learning never like where's this rule
Yeah,
that learning
I mean, that's a-
stops?
Right.
That's what I always
Once
say.
you get your degree, you're done.
yeah,
Right.
or like 8.
You
We
know?
can only learn in the 9 months from
Right.
8 to 2:30. Like I don't get that. That's
Right.
just one
well,
of
the
those things we're
school's
trying to break
motto
down.
at the school I was at, you guys, was we learn not for school but for life.
Yeah,
And
right.
like you're
Yeah.
learning for life, problem solving,
Right.
character building,
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
along with your siblings, like getting along, you know, learning how to build
Oh
things
yeah,
around the house and stuff.
responsibilities.
You
yeah.
mentioned that COVID, you know, kind of slowed down your business a little bit and whatnot, but how did it like, well, just how do you balance working? Because both of
Yeah.
you work for your family business. How do you balance that? Obviously, you guys have a flexible schedule, but you
Yes.
still have to get work done.
Yeah, yes,
So
yes,
what
yes.
do you do? Because a lot of
Yes.
parents, and again, you guys, this
Yeah.
video is for people who are choosing to
Choosing,
homeschool, not who are going to be like, oh, 3 weeks in, and then all of a sudden the schools are shutting down. This is a deliberate
That
choice.
creates a whole level of anxiety for me. I just have nothing but
You
like,
guys were
prayers
pioneers,
for
like you
that.
knew.
It was
what-
just
No,
it was
God
God's
knew.
timing.
Yeah.
Really,
It was-
because
Yeah.
there was even a moment like during that second week of March when we were having to shut down parts of our business and lay off people, and I was like, thank goodness the kids were able to just sort of keep going
our
along.
schedules
If
didn't
I would have
change.
been
Yeah.
thrown into it like I knew, you know, half the world was, I would have probably
Yeah,
been
having to
jumping
manage
over
the
the edge.
kids
Yes,
and the
managing the
business,
kids
yeah.
and managing the business. My dad was on a cruise; he was out of the country, and I was like, great, now we have to make all these decisions.
And you had to make all the decisions, yeah.
So
A lot
that
of
was a
things on your
little
shoulders.
right. So that was a little crazy, but we do, you know, we do work together. Brendan, he can do a lot more stuff remotely. So a lot of times he can kind of cover when I actually physically need to
Had
be
to be
at
in
my
the
office.
office.
And then we were fortunate enough that we have an ex-teacher that the kids knew, that we were able to have her come one morning a week.
Oh, that's so
so
great.
that because we do work together, we would have projects that we would need to save up to like work together on at work. And it's just easier when you're not in the mix of it. Because if you're in the house, the kids are like, hey mom,
Yeah,
hey dad, hey
the,
mom.
the interruptions.
Yeah,
right.
and
Right.
so she was able to come, and she wasn't affected by the COVID. She kept coming during all of that, and
That's
will
great.
continue with us. She's been continuing with us this summer, and she's just like a blessing, a super sweet lady. And the kids like her.
And she's
They
a
were-
former teacher, so you got
yes,
that. Like, she's
Right,
out
and
there.
they, and
Yeah,
all
she's
the
a
kids
good
had her,
person.
so they
Right.
knew her.
Yeah,
You know,
There's
so.
familiarity there, too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's been great. And so we're able to do it that way. And you know, we don't have a lot of free time. That's
Right.
really kind of what it comes down to it. But for this season, I feel like it's important enough to not. Yeah, like I miss my massages on Wednesday, and you know,
Certain little,
certain
like,
things
luxuries.
like going to get my nails done every
Right.
now and then while they were at school. But you know, it's only
You
so
recognize
short.
it. Well,
and
I was
it's
like, you
only so
recognize that
short.
it's only 20 years of your life,
It's
really.
only so
you know?
short. Yeah, really.
So do you have any regrets?
About
Just homeschooling, choosing to homeschool?
I mean,
Do you wish you would have done
today,
it sooner?
maybe not, but like maybe this morning when we were doing math, because Allison didn't get it done earlier this week, maybe. But no, I wish we would have probably done it a few years earlier.
Yeah, and I mean, Melissa's done the majority of it, so I mean, my hat's off to her. She's been fantastic. Yeah, she's been fantastic. You made me lose my train of thought.
Just about
That would be
regrets.
regrets. Yeah, I
or,
mean, you can't
know.
really. I mean,
Yeah,
you
but
can't really live in that,
yeah,
but-
you can, and you know what we hope that we're doing is we hope that we're just planting seeds,
Yeah.
and that we you know the results are probably not going to be immediate because it was a tough year because you know Andrew especially he wanted to be at school,
Yeah, he wanted to fool
you know
around with
so
his
we've
friends.
got a lot of
Untraining
sour
and-
faces and there were times where like, is this really worth it? Oh my
Right.
Like
gosh,
sending
the
them to
path of
school
least
would be
resistance.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
like I mean, we used to have like a saying. So there's like diary of wimpy kids. Anybody that has kids,
Oh,
know
yeah.
diary of wimpy kids. They like threaten to send the kids off to Spag
Spag Union,
Union, which
military
is like
school.
a military school.
Yeah.
So every now and then I'd be like Spag Union.
There's always Spag Union.
Like I'm gonna
You
ship
know.
you off to that comic strip world as Spag
Yeah.
Union. But you know,
Yeah.
because if they were just giving me a lot of bad attitude, but a lot of times I think it's like I knew that if I didn't set myself in the morning in
Yep.
a good frame of mind, or if I was having a rough morning.
They were gonna
typically
vibrate
It
on that,
typically
yeah.
does spiral.
Yeah.
And so I would just learn to say, I'm going to the restroom. And when I come back, we'll get back to it.
So-
And just like to reframe.
Regroup
Yeah,
yourself.
regroup.
So there's many days where you're like,
Yeah.
is this worth it? This
Yeah.
is this is
This
it's
is
a lot.
hard.
It's
a
a
lot of
lot.
work.
It is. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work.
But you know we've seen some of the
fruits of your
dynamics
labors already.
and change in the
wonderful.
family, and it's like this was a good choice,
Right.
and let's just hope
Yeah.
this keeps up and.
And strangely enough, like, especially Andrew, the one that like wants, missed his buddies, wanted to be in school, like he's gotten more social,
Interesting.
which is weird.
Well, and I think too, because I hate to say this, but because of everything that happened since March, the other kids were around,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes,
and so
right.
it made it
Yes.
a little bit more available,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure, to some, some
Yes.
degree. But
And there's so many like I was even just not even familiar with. There's so many resources out there. Now, granted,
I was
we
going
live
to
in
ask that.
Hermitage.
What are some resources?
It's a
or
it's
tips
a little
and
limited
tools?
in some places, like bigger metro areas, like towards Pittsburgh,
they-
towards Cleveland. There's tons of co-ops. There's charter schools. There's part-time schools. So there's a lot more resources in other parts of the country, but there are still some good ones here. So we're trying to stay positive about that. But
Were there any online resources or anything you guys really used?
we did not do anything online this year. That was by choice because our kids get enough screening,
screen time.
we were really with like the brain balance program we were doing. We were really trying to reduce like the amount of screen time that they were having. But
How did you monitor that? Do you guys set timers?
Yeah.
or
we
do
do,
you?
they get an app.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we were afraid that
Brendan's
I
very
mean,
techie, so just in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
1 hour a day.
yeah.
Thanks
So
for tuning in. I'm just looking to see.
So we
Miss
were
Lori.
we were
Keep going.
we were afraid that if they were online doing
Yeah,
like
they
a
would
math
migrate.
curriculum, next thing we know we'd look over
Yeah.
and they'd be like on Netflix
Yeah,
or Disney
right.
Plus
Yeah.
or
So we
or
just kinda
something
made
like
that a
that. So we
decision
said,
to
let's try not to. But now that that like Andrew's getting into high school and some of the curriculum may be getting a little
Tougher.
a
Yeah,
little
there
tougher.
is.
We're
Yeah.
thinking, we're going to be open to the idea of exploring
we're
some
gonna,
of the
when we
online
finish
curriculum.
we're in the second year of the math. We're gonna go on to do like an online math
Okay.
program for a little bit because
Okay.
there's an immediate reward with the grading that they miss.
Yeah, there's also like an accountability.
Yeah,
Right.
it grades it and everything.
Right.
So there's tons of resources out
It's-
there.
Is there any one in particular you guys used? I know that you guys had a special curriculum this past year, but you're
Yes,
kind of
right.
not using that. the same
Yeah,
one
I
this
did.
year.
Yeah, there's a lot of I felt like for the first year, I really needed what I told you was like an open and go curriculum. It was like everything was included,
Laid out, kinda.
and it was laid out. It was charted by the week, by the day, and I just felt like I needed that. Being that I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, you were new to it.
And it was good, but I decided this year we're not going to do that with our co-op that we're using. They are using some other sources. It has some classical education that's in it and some group study stuff that's more like meant for the whole family. And so we're just kind of veering off and going to do a little bit of a mixture of curriculum, which makes me like a little crazy nervous, but at the same time kind of exciting too, because it's like stuff we really want to study. Like we're going to really dive in and study the United States this year, and like how timely is that? That's not even
The
our plan.
election
That's
year.
kind of like the co-op's
Right,
plan.
right.
So we're going to just really try to learn a lot about the United States history. So there's so many resources. There's so many websites out there. Kathy Duffy, something Kathy Duffy reviews. I mean, it's like she's been around for like 30 years reviewing homeschooling curriculum. Talk to people, which is not my gig. That's your gig. Like you're more of a networker, and I've had to get out of my comfort zone and like network with people and find out.
Just the number of curriculums, it's overwhelming.
It is.
You can get so bogged down and
just making the choices. I mean, really.
Yeah, we went to the homeschooling convention last year in Harrisburg. And that was kind of our first exposure into the homeschooling
world. Which was like probably overwhelming.
It
was.
It was. But
it was good,
people have these like kind of like stereotypes that the homeschool kids are those kids that live out in the country and are kind of weird, antisocial,
and
backwards.
Like sewing their own clothes.
And you go and you see a lot of like Mennonite.
Yeah, there was a lot of.
But then you see a lot of other people that are just like us that are doing the same thing, and you're like, hey,
maybe we can pull this off.
This isn't so out in left field as I thought. No,
that's awesome. Well, are there any final thoughts, or I was just looking to see if anybody had any questions. I know we've had some people who had to run. I was just looking to see. No, typed in something by accident. Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that there were no questions, or that nobody had any questions. But other than that, I guess the biggest thing is like just finding the balance. I mean, have you guys been able to find a rhythm to things? I know that you mentioned like it's kind of like sometimes on a Sunday you're doing things.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's definitely
you
definitely have to like plan. You have to be intentional, because if you're not prepared, the kids know it, and they can kind of run with it.
Yeah, and also, but when you have the schedule, the kids know what to expect.
Yeah, and they thrive on that.
Right. So if it's just with us, if it's just willy nilly, let's do it whenever.
Work for us.
Yeah, then they want to be be doing something else, and you got to pull them out of that, and they don't want to do it. But if they know, if they know this is what we're doing today, things tend to flow a lot better.
And I think one thing that's very popular, I will say, like if there is anybody that is considering it, is one thing that seems to be very popular in like the homeschool culture, which it is a little bit, is that people say, first year you should unschool. He doesn't know what I'm talking about probably. A little bit, but that you should just like, don't try to make it look like school. Just get the kids reading,
kind of break that paradigm,
right? Yeah, we didn't do that, mostly because I feel like we're behind. It's kind of like we're coming to the party late, so we didn't do that. But I could see where there would be some benefit, and some people will just say we're gonna like unschool for like summer and maybe an extra month just to really get them to decompress. Again, that doesn't work in our family. We're all like wired where we just operate better on a schedule, which is why we started school, lightly.
Right.
But that is like a popular thing. People just feel like, and maybe even the people that are having to transition because of this COVID thing as an emergency, that they have to just kind of look at it a little differently, because it is going to be, it's going to be different. It's a different kind of year all the way around.
Right.
So, but we didn't do that, and maybe that would have been something I wish I would have like taken that advice to do that.
Yeah, but that's one of the beauties of homeschooling is you can really tailor it to your family.
Yeah.
Once you kind of learn how your kids
you guys
learn.
have traveled, and you guys have been able to do so much, some different really cool things.
Yeah, not as much as we would like, It's kind of
there was a lot of damper on the travel.
Yeah.
We're optimistic.
That,
You're gearing up that this fall might be differently.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, like I mentioned, I'm going to try to hop on next week with maybe some teachers or some principals or other people who are maybe, working from home and then still wanting to send their kids back to school, but just trying to be able to give multiple perspectives. And so today this was just diving in and letting you guys know that there is an option, which is homeschooling, and choosing to do it is a choice. So I'm hopeful that this was helpful, and thank you so much for tuning in with us today. And hopefully you guys all gathered something and learned something. They're great parents, by the way, and that's where it all started. So they've been planting seeds.
She doesn't know what she's talking about.
No, I totally know. I'm around their kids enough, which is the reason why they want to hang out with me. I'm just kidding. I'm just totally kidding. All right, guys, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.